welcome to Perspectivas Latinas, a community service of CAN TV. I'm your host, Karina. Joining me today is Ana Guajardo, Laila Lopez, and Maria Chavez from Centro de Trabajadores Unidos, the Central of United Workers?
Immigrant Workers Project is how we translate it.
Immigrant Workers Project. Very good. Welcome, and welcome to you. Maybe we should start out a little bit with the history of the organization.
Okay. Si quiere, da María, la historia yo le traduzco.
Nuestra organización empezó hace 4 años.
Our organization started about 4 years ago.
Cuando la empresa se fue a bancarrota,
when our company went bankrupt,
no nos querían pagar nuestros salarios que se nos debía por 1K y vacaciones.
The company did not want to pay our salaries that were owed, vacation time, 401k.
Entonces nosotros decimos que tenemos que buscar ayuda. Y nos trasladamos hasta Pilsen, fue donde se nos dio la ayuda primeramente. Se nos informó que teníamos derechos, y fue donde iniciamos nosotros. Después vimos la necesidad de que en Sur Chicago no había un centro de trabajadores, y ahí fue donde iniciamos primeramente nosotros uno.
So we found ourselves traveling to Pilsen to look for support from another worker center. We did not have any help in our community, so what we started doing as a result of that, we decided that we wanted to form this new organization, Centro de Trabajadores Unidos.
Okay. Empezamos dando talleres en escuelas, en las iglesias, nos dimos a conocer más y más, y hemos tenido muy buena aceptación hasta este momento.
So we started doing a lot of Know Your Rights training, educating the community of rights that they have on labor and immigration, and that's how we started becoming more recognized in our community.
And what are some of these rights that we are not aware that we have, that we should be aware of?
Yeah. Well, every worker in the United States and also in Illinois are entitled to receive the minimum wage. Here in Illinois, the minimum wage is $8.25. If you work more than 40 hours a week, you're entitled to overtime pay. As well as you get injured on the job, you are entitled to workers' compensation. So it's important that you notify your employer if you get injured, because you have 45 days to notify them. And the company is responsible to pay for your medical bills. So these are some basic rights that workers have here in the state of Illinois.
You know, I remember there was a lot of debate about getting the minimum wage up to $8.25. There was quite a brouhaha, but we got it. We got the $8.25. And so it's disturbing to hear you imply that there are workers in the state that are not actually earning that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we were grateful that here in Illinois last year the minimum wage increased to $8.25 in July. Unfortunately, we don't have any more minimum wage increase coming up, which is something that we're actually working with other organizations to try to get that introduced and passed out of our legislators in the House and the Senate. So what we have seen during the work that we've been doing in our community, that a lot of workers are getting paid $5, $6 the hour. In some instances, workers are getting paid $4 the hour. So what's important for workers to know that you are entitled to receive that time that you work for, but also entitled to receive the minimum wage, which is $8.25.
Maybe I sound like Pollyanna here, but how can that be? If there's a law that says you have to pay $8.25, how are people getting paid $5 and $6?
Well, part of the work that we do is we predominantly focus with the immigrant community. And what we see a lot in the immigrant community is that workers are afraid to speak up, whether it's because of their legal status or because they're afraid to get fired. There's a lot of intimidation. So it's not just one group of workers who are exploited, there's several other workers. But because of how we are right now with the economy, workers are afraid to speak up and say something, and they rather work for those wages. But what we try to inform the workers is that you are entitled to fight for those wages. If you're not working there anymore, come to an organization, go to the Department of Labor and file your case, or if you still want to file it while you're in there, we'll more than welcome you.
So I can save my check stubs, and what else do I have to do?
So a lot of companies do not pay with check stubs. So if you do, what I encourage workers, save your check stubs. They're always important, they always come handy. But we also know that there's a lot of employers who pay under the table and pay in cash, or sometimes they give their personal checks. So what we're asking workers is maintain a record of all the times that you've worked, the hours and the pay at the end of the week, and you keep that record. So at the end of the day, if you decide to file a case, you have proof, and it's your proof. And the employer by law is entitled to maintain company records And so when they don't, it actually falls more on the company for not doing that.
Now you just made me think about something that probably needs to be talked about on a larger scale, and if this is beyond what we're here to talk about, you just let me know. But you know, there's a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment out there right now. I don't need to tell you that. And I hear these things and I don't understand about how people aren't paying their taxes and how people are, you know, getting benefits that they don't deserve, and I think, how could they, you know, how does that work? Now as I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, well, if you have employers who are paying people under the table in cash, and they're saying, well, look, I'm paying you cash, so I'm only going to pay you $6 an hour, because if I was paying you with a check, I would pay you $8, but then it would go to taxes, so you're really better off like this. It's really the employer who's better off like this.
Yeah, it is. And so what we see a lot is that, yes, these companies pay workers in cash, but that doesn't mean that workers are not filing at the end of the year. And there's actually been studies showing that workers do file, regardless of their legal status, file for their taxes at the end of the year. However, the ones that don't is the company. So the state is going without compensating from the business that the employers are receiving. And so we see that a lot, but even despite that, we want workers to know that they do have rights and that they should organize and fight, regardless of what their situation is.
And the people who are complaining about the immigrants should really be complaining about the American companies that are exploiting them.
Right? It happens everywhere.
Pero también hay empleadores que, como saben que son inmigrantes, les dicen que es mejor para ellos pagarles en cash.
So a lot of employers, they know the situation of the worker, and so because of that, they use that to tell the workers that they have to pay them in cash.
Y lamentablemente hay trabajadores que trabajan 60 horas por $5 la hora. Son 300 a la semana.
And unfortunately, there are situations where workers get paid $5 the hour for 60 hours a week, which equals $300 a week.
Y así evitan pagarles el tiempo extra, pagándoles en cash.
And with that, the employers don't pay time extra, overtime.
Well, they're not paying overtime. They're not paying employment tax. They're not. They're not contributing to all the categories that most of us see on our check stubs, where the employer has to contribute. They're saving all that money, and then the bad press comes out against that employee who's being exploited now twice.
But
I'm learning. Keep talking.
It's a work in progress, and one of the things that we did last year to try to educate the community, but as well as the employers about the rights that workers have, is we understand that they're government agencies, the Department of Labor, who are there to work with support workers with their cases and filings. But we understood that the Department of Labor did not have the resources to be able to collect the money at the end of the day. So what we try to do, and what we did last year, is we passed state legislation that combats wage theft. So employers who refuse to pay workers what they're owed, and the Department of Labor makes a decision against the employer, saying that they are owed these wages. If they don't pay by a certain time, there's going to be penalties. So all this is going to be accumulating and supporting the Department of Labor so they can better enforce these cases. So it's a tool that the Department of Labor has received, and thanks to the support of workers and our legislators in Illinois that saw the importance of that and understand that while there's good employers, there are also bad employers. So we want the bad employers to know that we are working and organizing in our communities and will not tolerate these abuses.
That's great.
It's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress, and it's so necessary because, you know, I think there's this myth that the companies are going to be self-monitoring. And that's just, from what you're telling me, it sounds like that's not happening.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that are happening, and I'll reinforce again, you know, there's good employers, but there's bad employers. And one of the things that we're doing in our community to try to change that is we introduce what we call the Code of Conduct. And so far we've had 2 employers who signed this Code of Conduct, which is a mutual agreement between the community and the employer that they're going to respect the rights of their workers. And so we're asking them to follow all state and federal laws, at the same time to go above and beyond that and provide workers in the future sick days, no retaliation if a worker wants to file a complaint, that there's no adverse actions taken against them, as well as to be able to meet with us as a community organization to try to resolve the issues with the employer and the worker. So that's something that was just introduced, and now we're looking for support from our community organizations, the businesses, to sign on to this code of conduct so we can be able to let the community know, here's a good employer. And we're going to give them a stamp of approval on their door so the community knows this is a good employer I can go and purchase products from, who's going to be respecting the rights of workers.
You know, you see, it's so interesting because you see like the Energy Star symbol, and you see places that say, you know, we recycle, we're being good to the earth. And then there's other restaurants that say, you know, no MSG, you know, we're good to your body. But it's like really important to see where it says we're good to our employees, because so many of the times those employees come right from the community. And those are the same families. I'm thinking of like maybe a supermarket. Those are the same families that go and buy there, right?
Para que pase esto, es muy importante que la comunidad hable, reporte estos abusos. No importa la raza, no importa su color, no importa su estatus migratorio. Hay que hablar y reportar estos abusos.
So in order for this to be a success with the code of conduct, what we need is the workers to be able to stand up and speak for their rights, and be able to voice their concerns of what's happening in the workplace.
Very good, very important. So who should they call?
¿Quién deben llamar?
La comunidad debe llamarnos al Centro de Trabajadores Unidos. Hay muchos centros en toda la área de Chicago que les pueden ayudar. Nosotros estamos localizados en Sur Chicago.
So workers can call our organization, Centro de Estados Unidos Immigrant Workers Project, but there's also other worker centers in different parts of the city, so you can communicate with us. We can direct you to the right organization, depending on your area.
Y lo bueno que cuando ustedes vengan y reporten estos abusos, ustedes mismos van a poder hacer oír su voz de todo lo que han vivido, de todo lo que ha pasado, para ayudar a los demás a que se animen a parar estos abusos.
So when workers begin to voice their concerns and the problems that are happening in the workplace, it's going to bring more attention to the situation, and it's also important for other workers to know in the community what's going on and be able to unite.
Excellent, excellent.
Yep.
So what exactly is in the code of conduct?
Yeah. So what we're asking is for employers to follow all state and federal laws, including minimum wage, overtime, workers' compensation. If a worker gets injured, that there's follow-up with that, as well as provide workers lunch breaks, anything that the state and federal law provides. But we're also asking them to go a little bit beyond, which is what I mentioned, look in the future to provide workers with sick days, for the companies to create a process where any worker can file a complaint, whether to not be retaliated, but as well as meet with the community organization to try to resolve the issues. That's what's in our code of conduct.
Excellent. And is it hard to get companies to sign on?
It's a little bit hard, but I think once we begin to educate more employers about the benefits of it, as I mentioned, we're going to be working in our community to promote those good employers, to whether it's through our bulletins, our annual dinner, which is coming September 10th of this year at our church, different events that we're going to be having. We're going to be promoting those good employers, so it's an incentive for them. You want to be respectful to your workers, we will make sure that the community knows that you are respectful and that you are a good employer for them to go purchase products in.
And then we need the community to do their job.
Yes.
Yes.
Is that what you were going to say?
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, es con la ayuda de la comunidad también. Donde vengan, donde vean que es un buen empleador, compren.
So, if the community sees this a good employer, purchase products there.
So let them know, right? I passed 3 stores to get to your store because you treat the workers right.
Yes.
Yo quería hacer un cambio. También hemos tenido muy buenos casos en que la gente ha recuperado desde $1 hasta $1,000 que ha sido quitado de su mismo trabajo, que sus empleadores se los han ido quitando y es dinero de ellos y los han recuperado.
So I also want to add that one of the things that we were able to do is we've helped workers recover wages from $1 to $1,000 or more, and this is something that has been as a result of the work that we've been doing. Which is actually pretty impressive for a new organization like ours to be able to help workers recover their wages. But as Maria was mentioning, we can't do it without the support of the workers, so we really depend on the workers to step up and take more initiative on their case.
Y ahora estamos a unos tenemos unos casos que estamos haciendo campañas. ¿Qué es esto? Son campañas que hacemos con las ruedas de prensa.
So we are currently working on a few campaigns where we're trying to also expose the conditions in the workplace, and some of the things that we do is have press conferences.
Las iglesias.
We go to the churches.
Y también hacemos volantes para que la comunidad apoye.
So we leave that so the community can support the work.
Y lo más importante, que puedes hacer oír tu voz.
And more importantly, is the worker's voice can be heard.
¿Y cómo hago que mi voz se escuche? ¿A dónde voy?
How do I make my voice be heard? Oh, sorry.
Al Centro de Trabajadores
in
Unidos.
Spanish. How do I make my voice heard?
En el Centro de Trabajadores Unidos podemos apoyarlos, educarlos y informarlos.
With the organization Centro de Estados Unidos, you can come, we will support you and help your voice be heard.
Okay. Quiero decir otra cosa. Como usted ve, somos madres de familia, tenemos muchas cosas que hacer, pero donamos nuestro tiempo para estar ahí y escuchar a las demás personas. Entonces, no porque soy una mamá o soy esto, no tengo tiempo para esto ni para otro. Si hay tiempo, si la gente quiere 10 minutos que se nos dé de tiempo para nosotros, para la organización, muy bienvenidas.
So we are mothers, we have children, so we also want to let women know that, get involved, do your part, even if it's 10 minutes of your time, but it's important that there's more involvement from you.
Y el centro está conformado de personas que hemos acudido al centro para recibir el apoyo de ellos.
So the organization is actually, a lot of them, our members are workers who have been exploited in the past and who have been more involved.
Y aquí estamos aquí para hablar y para decir lo que nos ha pasado, para que no les pase a nadie más.
So we are here to make our voice be heard and that this does not continue to happen to other workers.
Yeah, it's definitely a once and for all, that you don't expect to see a company shape up and then when you turn around that it goes back to where they were. It's got to be a forward moving project.
Y somos un centro sin fines de lucro. Somos voluntarios, donamos nuestro tiempo para ayudar a nuestra comunidad.
So our organization is a non-for-profit organization and we donate our time. The work that we do is on a volunteer basis.
Which is really important. It's a very grassroots organization and helping real people with real immediate now situations.
Yeah. And one thing I do want to mention, a lot of the work that has been able to happen in our communities has been through the coalition building with worker centers and community organizations. We receive a lot of support from our churches in our community as well as organizations, as well as like legal clinics, Working Hands Legal Clinic, and the Just Pay for All Coalition, which was a big part of the legislation that we passed, where we had 2 other worker centers, the Chicago Workers Collaborative, Latino Union, and our worker center got involved and did this. So we understand that it's important to be able to unite as well as organizations to be able to produce more effective work in our communities.
And it all starts there. I think, I'm not the world's historian, but I think that so much starts with workers' rights. I think, correct me, don't let me say something that wrong on TV, but, we hear about women's rights and we've heard about, children's rights and elder rights, and we go by different nationalities' rights, but wasn't workers' rights one of the most fundamental?
Yeah. Everyone works, and so it's important that every worker can be able to fight for their rights, and we know that there's fear of intimidation, fear to get fired, but if you don't begin to speak up and let our employers know that we're going to hold them accountable, then this is going to continue to happen, and in so many ways it's a form of exploitation, a form of to the point where that these employers, really take advantage of workers, house them in areas, like they just control the workers. So we have to fight. We have to organize more than anything and let these employers know that we're watching them as well.
And let the people know, informing the people. And like you pointed out, there's safety in numbers, that you want to have a lot of people together, that they can't just say, okay, fine, we're going to just fire all of you, that it would actually hurt production. There has to be enough people. So I would imagine that you have to have a certain amount of subterfuge. that
Tenemos que salir de la oscuridad, tenemos que luchar, tenemos que hacernos oír estos abusos porque no es uno, son miles.
We have to get out of the shadows. We have to stop being afraid. We have to be more upfront because it's not just one, it's thousands of workers.
Yeah.
And it's so fundamental, as you said, everybody works. Everybody needs some kind of income.
Yeah. And no matter what your legal status is, you know, no matter what your situation is, if you work, you're entitled to that pay for the time that you work.
Y a veces la comunidad piensa que por trabajar en un restaurante o ser meseros o piensan que esas leyes son solo para las fábricas, no.
So sometimes workers think that because you're a restaurant worker or you work in a specific industry that you're not entitled to these rights, but no, everyone's entitled.
Yeah. Todo trabajador tiene salario mínimo 8.25, tiene que tener un lonche, un descanso.
So every worker is entitled to minimum wage, which is $8.25, lunch breaks,
Horas extras.
overtime pay.
Tenemos derechos.
We have
Tenemos
rights.
que informarnos por los derechos laborales.
We have to be informed of our rights.
Absolutely. And demand them.
And demand them, yeah. Y demandarlos. Yeah.
Great. Well, I've loved having you here. It's been such an important subject. I want to thank you. Muchísimas gracias. Y gracias, and thank you so much for
thanks
being
for
here.
having us.
What an important subject, and I hope that a lot of people will call you and will take advantage and get organized and find that safety in the numbers, because work is so fundamental. It's so basic.
We would like to invite people. September 10th, we're going to have our annual dinner at Our Lady Guadalupe Church. For anyone who wants to support the organization, we really depend on donations, so anything will be grateful.
Great. And when you talk about donations, not just things, I imagine time.
Yes, volunteers. Yeah, any help will be great.
Somebody can grab the phone and make some calls. And
Yes, definitely.
absolutely. All right. Well, you said it. Thanks again for
Thanks
being
for having
here.
us.
Ah, quiero darle las gracias al Padre Carlos por habernos abierto las puertas ahí. Nos dio un lugar muy bueno. Y es donde está nuestra oficina.
And I just want to thank Father Carr, our pastor from
La
Our Lady
Iglesia de
Guadalupe
Guadalupe.
Church, who's opened the doors in the beginning and has provided us the office to do the work.
Well, thank you, Padre.
Gracias, Padrecito.
Thank you. I'd like to thank my guests, Ana, Laila, and Maria, for joining us. Perspectivas Latinas is a community service of CAN TV. If your nonprofit organization would like to use CAN TV services, please call us at 312-738-1400 and ask for nonprofit services. Tune into Perspectivas Latinas for local issues and concerns every Thursday at 8:30 p.m. here on CAN TV 21. I'm Karina. Thank you for joining us.